All right, time for some early Switch indie game Kino. One of the very, very first major Switch indie releases, Snake Pass, was a game I sunk a lot of time into back when it first came out. It was very beloved upon release, and even today still has a very, very dedicated fan base. And I thought I would demonstrate the gameplay today because this really is something that even now kind of sticks out as an indie game that's a little bit different, but still has a lot of classic Nintendo charm. It is essentially a very unique style of 3D collectathon. I'm not even sure. I hesitate to call it a platformer because there is no jumping. But let's once we decide on a level here, we'll demonstrate the gameplay. These loading times are long. Okay. So as you can see, Snake Pass is a game where you get to play as a snake, like very, very self-evident, right? But the game's hook, and the thing that makes it very appealing to basically anyone who even picks up the controller, is that like the snake moves very, very realistically. Like what you're seeing here. I am not moving the character by moving the control stick in a specific direction. Like I am holding holding ZR and moving the character left, right, up and down with a variety of different buttons. And that's essentially all the game is moving the snake around a hazardous environment in a realistic snake-like fashion with a adorable cartoon snake, Noodle, who I think is just a very charming protagonist. He looks just like a classic Rareware snake. This really does feel like a classic experimental title, something that had never really been done before, with a unique control scheme, a unique setting, a unique world, a unique kind of feel to the game, and a really gorgeous too, like a surprising amount of like very large, vast environments. Like it feels like a big budget 3D platform game from the N64 or GameCube era. It really does feel like it wasn't a small team that made this. This game does have a lot of love and care put into it, and it's still very clearly an indie game. Like I paid like very little for it. I would say like $15 maybe. I'm not quite sure. I don't quite remember. But like it was an affordable indie game at launch. I believe like the month the Switch came out or the month after that, it was definitely one of those games that kind of stuck out to people in the early days of Nintendo Switch. And like it was one that people discovered and played, and it was very, very popular. Like people were talking about this game for quite a while after it came out. It was making hidden gems lists. It was being talked about a lot, and it's not hard to see why, because because of the way the controls work, the character has a very unique style of platforming in which you have to like writhe and twist your way around obstacles in order to like collect the collectibles. Like see here, this is a moving pedestal, and you have to like kind of snake your way up it by using these sticks as platforms. And like the interesting thing is like it feels very organic. It feels natural. Like it feels like they're not naturally made platforms, but like because you're a snake, you can take advantage of the fact that like of the natural environment and just kind of like navigate anyway. Like these things seem like barriers to most animals, but not to the snake, not to our boy Noodle. Like, see here, this is a gap that, like, no other animal could get across. But Noodle, oh, no problem. He can just twist his way through it. Like, again, this is actually a challenge. This isn't, like, easy or anything. You have to, like, position your body. You have to, like, keep in mind how much length you have left. Noodle's size is actually very important because depending on, like, how much of your weight is in certain spots, like, you could, like, lose your balance and fall. That's something that's very important and you need to keep in mind. And the character can swim too. Like you actually do have a wide range of actions you can take in this game. A surprisingly wide range of actions. You can dive and like look for treasure and hidden passageways. It's just a simple, intuitive thing that just keeps delivering with with more and more like intense environments as the game progresses, and there are no enemies or anything. Like the game is entirely like I suppose you could call it man versus nature, or I suppose snake versus environment. Like it's entirely about like going around, getting the things you need to progress to the next stage, and there are a lot of collectibles in this. Like your primary objective is going around trying to find orbs and keys for the next area, and like you don't need to get them all, but I imagine 100% of the game is actually, well, it is quite challenging. There are quite a lot of things to collect, and there's a lot of things to do, and like simply finding things is very difficult. Oh, come to think of it, I think there is a snake vision that helps finding things a little bit easier, but I forgot to demonstrate it in this footage. I haven't played the game in a while, honestly. It's a game that keeps like that offered a premise and really delivered on it in spades. Like spectacularly so. Like I can't think of any other indie game on Switch that came up with like such a unique, like distinct concept, like so simple, but really managed to deliver on it in such like a fantastic way. Like most other indie games that I think of as being like creative or like wildly different or like ripping off some other game or doing something, like Snake Pass feels wholly original in like its style, its presentation, its general gameplay loop, its characters even. Like how many other games can you even think of where you play as a snake, let alone like a realistically like a one with like realistic movement and just like it's interesting like showing this game to people and seeing how they react, because this was like a very popular game among my family when it came out. It was like the game that people would pick out among a crowd and like spend like a good 15 minutes trying to get the hang of and having like a blast doing it. All right, this is a better Octodad. I remember when Octodad came out on PlayStation 4, like launch day for that, and people like were over the moon about it, saying it was like the best thing ever, that it was like really unique and original. It's really, really not. Like Octodad is like very straightforward, like doesn't have a lot of interesting environments, doesn't have any interesting premise. The controls, which were hyped up, weren't that big of a deal. This is like so much better in like both, not even just its like control scheme, but in its environments and just general presentation. It's just so much more, it's so much smoother, so much clean. Like just look at the animals, like they're not realistically rendered, but they're gorgeous, especially the hummingbird, which you see like following you around, which is very charming. He's your hummingbird friend, and you can see him like perching. You can see him like moving around the screen. It's charming, like very much so. I find myself shocked at how like Octodad got so much more attention than this game did when it was first unveiled. Like it was considered like a heavy hitter for PS4 like day one, like alongside Knack and like fucking Killzone. It was embarrassing. It was pathetic. It was one of the most asinine things I've ever seen. I hated how much Octodad got hyped, and this was kind of, this game had its day in the limelight. It had its day in the sun. It became popular. It sold a lot of units, but it was never reached that level where like it felt like mainstream audiences were praising it. Mainstream journalists were praising it for being like a unique, innovative experience, and I always thought that was kind of a shame. Like I always felt that like Snake Pass really went above and beyond with what this kind of game can do, what we can expect from indie games in the future, and it's certainly not the best indie game on Switch, but it's certainly a noteworthy one. Definitely one that I look back on fondly. Definitely one that I had a lot of fun like recording footage for. Like it's a game that does absolutely have its audience and should absolutely be given a lot of respect. And I just don't see that from a lot of game journalists. Like how many people today even talk about Snake Pass? It's just one of those games that's great at what it does and just does not get enough appreciation for it. And that, I think, is pretty sad.